compared to Wood Elf Kite, this feels pretty bare. Like it feels like we don't have that much of anything really. So I'm not sure. I guess the double dragon princes are very strong. They should be able to fight anything, especially with spear support. Flamespire Phoenix should do pretty well too. Hey, our opponent's already ready. Nice. This guy with his fast Q ups. And okay, just taking a look at his army, we're seeing a handful of elite troops, a Beast Lord, Eye of Morslieb, and some Centaurs. So not especially scary, and I think we should be able to carry out this game quite well. The only thing that we really have to worry about is our dragon princes, which we'll leave in reserve so that they don't get shot by the Cygor. In fact, that range is pretty nice. We'll just have to pull them a tiny bit further back. Or, you know what, you can just dodge these boulders. No problem. As for, let's see, tech list looks like getting hit by a few of these boulders. Also, hopefully these Centaurs will clump up so that I can put a net down on them. That's the goal anyways. But you know what? Maybe we can just fire on them instead. There we go. So very nice damage to kick off. We also have some Riches of Kalkengard coming in. I think a net. And then some shots into them. Should be able to win the day for us. It looks like their shielded front is pretty hard to break. They've taken a lot of fire, but they're still netted for another 8 seconds. So we're feeling like yeah, it looks like they'll probably be too low on HP to actually carry out to push through our front lines. So that's a very good start for us. We've also turned their backs by attacking with the Phoenix, getting a little bit more damage, and now they should be routed. And indeed they are. So this front line, it's some Gore Herd. A little bit stronger than our front line, means that we don't really want to engage until we can get a lot of archer fire in on them. And we do, getting in quite a bit of damage. We've also pulled back diagonally, which lets our archers shoot in from the side. Means that they'll be getting in a lot more damage. And we'll also put a heal on the Phoenix, just since it has taken a bit of damage. As for this Beast Lord, he has been completely just destroyed by our cavalry. And we've routed off the Gore Herd here. I guess we'll send in some Dragon Princes to take care of them. Regroup our infantry and then get our range units ready to fire in on these guys. One of the main weaknesses of the skirmishing power is that you will run out of ammo pretty quickly. You can see just killing a few units while already at half ammunition. So I think it's pretty important that we do some cycle charging here. Of course, we'll still want to fire away at these priority targets that are major threats to our army. But they're nearly down, so we're feeling quite good there. As for Bestigor Herd, they're very expensive, and you can't really waste ammunition shooting at them. So we'll go ahead and do that, while keeping our infantry away from combat until they have some sort of cavalry support. Now, let's see, the ROR Sargor does have a net, and we definitely don't want to be falling into that. So we'll just be, we're just gonna avoid it for now. In the meantime, we've successfully split up our opponent's forces. Let's see, come on, Techless, don't get stuck. Yeah, we've successfully split up our opponent's forces. So since these guys are so slow, we'll just be looping around and and winning the fight over here. This is yeah, and then without the infantry able to support, we should be able to get the kill on this giant here. It gets very low and it's down. Next up are the Koroks Man Rippers. Going to pull towards the left here while we kite them. And then bring in our Dragon Princes together, just so that They're, so that they are nice and, what's it? Yeah, well, we're just bringing them together so that they can really punch through these forces. The more damage they do, the less, uh, what's it? The less time my opponent will have to actually continue fighting with his troops. We also use the good old net plus fiery convocation combo, which does pretty well. It's a lot of these elite troops for a ton of damage. And I think we're just carrying out the win here. Some shots from our shadow warriors onto these elite troops should end them. They're getting extremely low now, and we can actually go into combat with them. Just to speed up this game so that we're not kiting this player for the whole day today. All we have to do is engage with our infantry, then charge them in the back because they have no support. And that'll be mass routes from them. And there we go, they're now out of the question. These Centaurs, we're going to net them just to guarantee that they can't dodge. And that will get us closer to army losses quite a bit faster. You can see just one volley gets them low, brings our opponent to army losses, and that's GG. Nice. So little bit of a strange game. I would say my opponent's army was quite unoptimized, and especially very unoptimized against this build. If you're going up against Kite, generally what you want to do is to be advancing and backing them into the corner, and using your cavalry or mobile units to collapse on the range units. After you take them out, they don't have much fighting power, so when the final fight eventually does happen, then you can just win it out on that. Yeah, all right. So this next game is Empire against Tomb Kings. We've brought a heavy ranged core, deal with single entities. We have nets of Ammontok to pin them down, and a very large front line, or a medium front line, with mostly spears and a few unbreakable troops to make sure that some points in the line will hold. For our opponent, he's brought a slightly larger army than me and has taken a good number of range units, which means that all of my handgunners and huntsmen really just have to focus down Cetra, and after that their job should be done. Oh man, some initial shots coming from my opponent from 2 caskets of souls, which means we will want to be advancing as quickly as possible. The Ushapti 2 will also pose a threat, and we'll have to really make sure that Volkmar doesn't get sniped out by them. Aside from that, though, it is just it is just it's just one unit of Ushapti and some archers, so Volkmar isn't in too much danger. In fact, if we turn him to follow along the right flank, I think we should be able to delay some of the shots of these guys, just because they'll have to turn to fire, and while they turn, they won't be doing any damage, but that alone won't help us. We'll have to be very on point with our dodges to make sure that Volkmar doesn't die outright here. And by just turning in the opposite direction when we see the shots come in, we can avoid most of the damage. In fact, almost all of the damage. Volkmar's taken very little at this point. And soon enough, we should be able to get our engage started. Our goals are to shut down the range units of the Tomb Kings, like these Ushapti, with our handgunners and our huntsmen. If Cetra comes anywhere close, we'll be throwing down a net, and he'll be eating a barrage of fire. And then once those are shut down, there's not a whole ton to worry about. Now, the front line of the Tomb Kings is mostly just skeleton spearmen. Especially scary. And yeah, we just want our infantry to get engaged in as quickly as possible, since they'll most likely be winning this fight, etc. We'll be diving in on top of these archers, putting in some very nice damage with his AoE. And for micro on him, it's all about bouncing between as many units as you can. So now he's going to be pushing in towards the towards the casket of the souls, moving in towards the archers, and actually a banishment here do us pretty well. As for Cetra, he's in range of a lot of our ranged troops, so we're going to throw down a net on him and begin focus firing him down. While we continue to focus on microing Volkmar through the back lines of the Tomb Kings. Our cavalry is shutting down the right flank, which means that there's not much to worry on this front for us getting shot. And with Volkmar on the left, just about all of the Tomb Kings' range is shut down. They do still have their caskets, but even if they do live at this point, they're really just shooting my huntsmen. And as we said earlier, it's we don't really need our ranged units after the monstrous Tomb Kings units are dead. And there we go. Cetra does indeed go down. These units are still good, and we want them to stay alive, but they're much less imperative for our win. Meanwhile, Tomb King's front line is going down very quickly now. We're able to get infantry into the back line, and that should be game. Even though, let's see, an Ushapti summon is coming in the back, and there are still the 2 caskets operational. They don't have anything that can really deal with Volkmar. This Ushapti summon is will do some good damage to my huntsman though. But because it can move and fire, we can throw down a net on top of the Ushapti and then advance with our huntsmen, so they can just continue firing away as they retreat from this danger. Our cavalry will want to continue bouncing around these troops, but at this point, there's not a whole lot going on. We just have to carry out the win. We've secured quite the lead, and it really shows that that if you play aggressively enough, you can avoid a lot of damage from artillery and range units. I think the Chosen of the Gods, Ushapti, very likely didn't pay for themselves, and and even though the caskets could do a lot of damage, they couldn't really prevent my range units from getting their damage in. So there we go. That's GG from our opponent and army losses. And another win today. It looks like a totally different game when it's all zoomed out. Yeah, usually like the max height is like this. I have to look lengthwise. Yeah, when you zoom out all the way, you barely have to move the camera. It's great. Now, let's see. Caskets of Souls. They only just paid for themselves. The Ushapti didn't, because we were dodging with Volkmar, which is very important. And let's see, I guess most of the damage value was in on... I'm not sure exactly. The Pistolier somehow got a ton of value, though, I guess. Just shooting Cetra and the Caskets of Souls. But yeah, generally pretty spread out at the looks of it. Our opponent's ready. So this game is High Elves against Empire. Ooh, that's a very far back deployment. So let's see, but we still have space to get around. Now, our army consists of mostly a net and Plague of Rust strategy, or some archer focus fire. And a lot of our funds have also gone into our skirmishing corps, with a decent front line to cut through Empire chaff. This should go pretty well, even if there are great swords. They tend to be pretty expensive for Empire. So, yeah, so Rangers are just great in general. Now for our opponent, he has a great cannon. Oh no, a Hellblaster volley gun. So, very different. It means that we don't really want to be moving in with our cavalry here. because the Hellblaster can do a lot of damage there, and it does fire away a few shots. We're going to try dodging it as best as we can. And it looks like we do a decent job, but you can see that massive damage just from a couple volleys. So definitely something to be extremely wary of. But if we can play around it, that should negate most of its value. The main downside of it currently is that it has to turn to fire here. And in doing so, it means that our front line can push in and shut it down. If it turns again, deal with our front line, we can move in with our cavalry. And it looks like that's setting up to be the case. Now there are silver bullets here. We're going to have to dodge them with our noble. Thankfully, we do notice just in time, and he doesn't take too much damage. And currently, our goals are to shut down these archers, to shut down the Hellblaster, and then to make sure we don't die to cavalry. Now, our skirmishers can keep back the demogryphs over here, but these ones are quite threatening. Oh, what are my rangers doing? Let's get them in the fight as quickly as possible. And geez, Teclis is getting absolutely murdered. So we're going to use our combo on good old Franz here. Also going to position to deal with the this cavalry that's circling around the back. We don't have a net anymore, which is very worrying. But our combo has really just decimated Franz here. Meanwhile, our second goal of dealing with the Hellblasters can be dealt with using our using our cavalry, which we'll be sending in. We may have to sacrifice them, we'll have to see. Our noble will be moving in to help with the cavalry fight, and we're just pulling away our cavalry here to put these demogryphs into a bad position. By nice, Hellblasters down. Yeah, so by pulling away with our units that are being charged by the demogryphs. Oh geez, guy's actually running. Man, I wish I had something to chase him. But yeah, by pulling away from the demogryphs, we can actually position our spears better and get counter charges, which I can easily get them routed off. And there we go. Those demogryphs are gone. We did lose a lot of our forces to take care of that Hellblaster though, and I'm questioning if that I'm questioning if that was worth it. But yeah, but we'll just have to live with that decision. The losing 2 skirmishers can be a very huge pain, since they're very good for cycle charging and using their ammunition. So trading them out just to shut down a Hellblaster for a bit of time is a little bit questionable. But we're still doing okay with our efforts on focusing Franz here. We were actually chunking him down, bringing him to his heal cap. And we're also winning the frontline fight, which means we can shut down the Hellblasters again. This time we're going to be disengaging with our cavalry, so that we can keep them safe, and we'll leave the rangers here to do the fighting. As for our right flank, there's Demogryph Knights that are pretty scary, and we're going to be bringing all of our units to bear to try and shut them down. They have halberds too, and I think I'd rather have my cavalry alive than to pin them down. Oh man, I feel like that might have been a bad decision, but it's the one that we've made. And that's because having 1 unit of cavalry left can be very important for late game situations. It'll let us cycle charge these great swords, which are a little bit scary here. The great swords with their high armor can be very hard to take down. So we're going to see if leaving our cavalry alive was a good idea. I think it might be though. Let's see, as for this Hellblaster, it's actually online again, and we're going to have to start positioning to deal with it. It could fire in on my cavalry over here, so we're going to pull back, keep them safe. And since our noble can do pretty well against the Demogryph Knights, we're going to send him in to deal with the Hellblaster. You'll still have to be careful, and we'll still want spear support to get in there. But if he can shut it down, then that puts us in a very nice position. Now, these Demogryph Knights are collapsing in on Teclis, which is not great. They have halberds, and Teclis will go down extremely quickly. So, going to see if we can pull him out. Looks like he does manage to escape, so second order of operations is throw down another net, and just to focus fire them with our archers. We can afford to just Plague of Rust on the normal level, since it does bring them down to 95 armor, which, although still high, is enough where our archers will still get a whole ton more damage onto them. You can see there, after the Plague of Rust goes down, the Demogryphs are out, and we pull a win. So that went pretty well. The Nets and Plague of Rust combo did a lot better than I would have expected. And in fact, that resulted in our archers really just dominating the damage values. Jeez. Yeah, absolutely amazing archer damage. And as for our skirmish cavalry, I think we could have done better on that front. The main threat here was that Hellblaster, and if we controlled better, we probably could have shut it down. We had a huge mobility advantage. So that'll be something to focus on next time. As for the army, though, some very strong combos, and I would like to try that out more. Ready? Next game, Empire against the High Elves. He has a very low troop count, which is great for a silly build like this. We've bought 10 range units with a crazy focus fire combo in the form of Plague of Rust and a net of Ammontok. We also have some cavalry to push back these silver helms. Thank goodness they're not dragon princes. For the record, you don't want to be using dragon Knights of the Blazing Sun here, because dragon princes have so much fire resist. Something you definitely want to be careful about. Now, we do have quite a few armor debuffs here. And hopefully we'll be able to kill off these white lions of trace before they collapse in on us. They do have a lot of missile resist, which is not optimal. Let's see how a standard Plague of Rust fares against them. We also have our great swords here. And with archer support, I think great swords should be able to do pretty well. We're going to send them into combat. Also going to throw down a net on this Archmage of Light. And then we're just going to turn and fire. And hopefully just murder them outright. That's going to be the goal. And hopefully we can do well. It looks like we still have 7 seconds on this net. She's getting extremely low. Our cavalry's winning the flanks. And we're very thankful that our front line is holding. Spearmen sacrificing their lives for this victory. And it looks like they're doing a pretty good job. Now, we do greatly outnumber the High Elf forces here. So the plan is simply to kite back with the troops that are being shut down, and to fire with the other ones. Our greatswords too have won the fight against the White Lions. And yeah, we just have, without a lot of mobility, the High Elves are going to be running into a lot of trouble here. Let's see, let's throw down another Plague of Rust. That should be able to deal with these White Lions. And yeah, without mobility, he can't really do much to this kite. And that's GG. So a very brutal game for the High Elves here. Jeez. That build is sort of gross. Yeah. Jeez. That went very nicely. Of course, you'll want to be careful to stay away from the nets. And I think with this type of low unit army, I think High Elves didn't stand too much of a chance here. He could have taken a longer time to flank around the sides, but our great swords against this like a small amount of White Lions means that he can't really punch through our front lines that quickly. Maybe Rangers could have done well, but they would have gone shot too. I'm not entirely sure. This is a build that we'll have to test out to see where it fails. But geez, pretty gross. This underway. This next game is High Elves against the Vampire Counts. Our armies are roughly the same, and we've brought a front line of relatively cheap units, and a very expensive backline of Sisters of Avalorn and Dragon Princes. These guys will be able to win most any cavalry fight, especially with the assistance of Teclis. And if things get dicey, or we feel like that fight might get rough, we also have a net to buy an advantage for our sisters. Now for our opponent, bought some Hex Wraiths and some Fellbats along with Vargeists. Many different tools that can catch our ranged core. But if it's just that, it's not too threatening. The main threat here is if the infantry can shut them down, since the infantry are much harder to peel off with our troops here. We're keeping an eye on those Hex Wraiths to make sure that they don't surprise me, flank around the side, and we're just getting into position so that our sisters can begin firing. First order of operation going to be hitting those Vargeists. And I'm noticing now our opponent doesn't really have much in the form of cavalry outside of the Hex Wraiths, which means we can actually start cycle charging his Graveguard here. Also going to be pulling back with our front line to make sure that their engage is as slow as possible. We want to optimize the value on our sisters, so delaying the engagement should work out pretty well. Going to position that these Hex Wraiths will get shot by the sisters. And we're also going to move in our spears because these Vargeists are beginning to come in. Meanwhile, the front line is collapsing too with Crypt Horrors charging into the mix, engaging onto my Rangers. And things are a little bit dicey here. Hex Wraiths are taking a lot of damage, and the Vargeists here especially are having a very rough time. And we're just keeping an eye on these Hex Wraiths, ready to throw down a net if we need to. As for our Dragon Princes, we're just bouncing them around that they can get their cycle charging. And that means that they should be able to get a lot of their damage value in without taking too much damage themselves. These types of games can be quite long and grindy, so it's very important that we optimize the value on our expensive troops. So disengage from the sisters here works because we have some dragon... Oh, actually we don't have Dragon Princes there. Where are my Dragon Princes? Over by the Graveguard, I see. Well, the disengage from the sisters still works just because... because we did have spears there, but our opponent, you can see, without Dragon Princes to pin down the Vargeists, things can still get pretty dicey. Speaking of, geez, that's a lot of lag. But yeah, the Vargeists can still shut down the sisters, but only one unit of them, which means that they can still fire away and get in a ton of damage. And there we go, Vargeists are down. And our goal right now is mostly just to have, just to keep these sisters alive. Their damage output is extremely high, and as long as they can keep shooting, then we're good to go. And by focusing these mobile units that can pin them down, it means that everything gets a whole lot easier. Infantry isn't especially scary because we can just charge them with our Dragon Princes. So that's going to be the goal. Now, for our front lines, we have a huge mobility advantage, and strangely enough, we can just disengage by walking away with our troops. There's no real need to keep fighting there, especially because the Mortis engine is around. And our troops are much more mobile than these zombies. So just running away with them is a pretty effective strategy. As for this area here, we don't plan to disengage since there's still troops here, like this White King and previously some infantry, and we wanted to hold them down to make sure our archers weren't bogged down. So yeah, so that's why we stayed here. But on this flank, we can disengage too. Our spearmen don't want to be fighting Graveguard, and disengaging there should work out pretty well. As for our Dragon Princes, we can see they're very effective versus infantry, and by cycle charging, it also stops them from moving towards me, which, of course, like we've said before, will buy time for our sisters. You can see they're getting in tons of shots, shooting on the side too to avoid their shields. And that's likely game. We've developed a very strong lead now. There's no more mobility. Sisters have gone in tons of shots. And all of the troops of the vampire counts are being bogged down. You can see Graveguard can't do much. I think that's a pendulum. Ooh, man, it does hit my sisters for a bit. But I think they're still alive. Yeah, we only lost one model there, which means that pendulum actually wasn't very worth it. And yeah, it's just about closing out the game now. There aren't too many risks. And really, the only reason that he's not at army losses yet is because of this Lamian Vampire Lord. So I guess we'll just move in so that we can snipe her out. But our opponent sees the end coming, and we do get a concession from him. So there we go, GG. I think a lot of that game came to some mistimed engages from my opponent, though. Without a strong engage, you can't really shut down the range units, and as we saw, they can get a lot of value. All the sisters paying for themselves and some, and the Dragon Princes, they didn't pay for themselves, but they were still at high HP, which means that they could have kept fighting even longer. But yeah, I think if you were the Vampire Counts player, though, the main idea is actually engaging at the right time so that you can shut down all of these, the ranged core for the High Elves. Anyways, enough of chess talk. We have a Warhammer game to play. With us as the Empire and our opponent playing as the Greenskins. He has a lot of skirmishers to start off with, and a decent amount of cavalry. This is actually looking similar to the game we played against Ulrich Wall the other day, with us having huntsmen to counter skirmish, and just a couple pistoliers to push back the rest of the skirmishers. As for the cavalry, we will definitely want to have our spears at the ready. And our spear units will be able to push back, let's see here, these Force Goblin Riders and Squig Hoppers, which is pretty nice. Franz can move in too to push back these guys, and I'd say right now we're actually winning the skirmish fight quite effectively. Now, as our opponent does have a large number of cavalry that aren't especially strong, I think it's warranted that we split our cavalry force here, so that we can cover our right flank. This makes sure that nothing can really loop around here to pressure us. And we don't really need to flank overload since our opponent doesn't really have a ton of range units. He does have a rock lobber though that I missed earlier. And that does mean that we will likely have to put in some sort of advance. Let's see, Huntsman here. We're moving up. Some spells go down from our opponent, but they do miss. And we're setting up to cycle charge these Goblin Spear units. In fact, our current forces, yeah, I think we'll just move in, start getting our charges in. As for the Greenskin cavalry forces, they are moving nearby, and we'll have to make sure we don't get countercharged. But maybe we can do okay. Man, it looks like he does realize that. We have spear units at the ready. They're going to be moving into fight. We have our huntsmen too, helping out where they can. And we actually have an infantry advantage here, so I think we're going to press that by advancing here. As for our cavalry, they definitely want to be engaging, but a net goes down on top of them. Now there's a big charge in from this boar cavalry. Getting a decent amount of damage, but we have Franz in here now. And let's see, we can also throw down some healing too, which I think we should have done a little bit earlier. Our cavalry on the left flank will want to be cycle charging. They do have spear support, which helps. But we still don't want them to take too much damage, especially with these orc boy big guns charging in. The fact that we pulled out means that we save a lot of damage on them. Now, this fight on the right flank is going very well for us, actually. With many of these greenskin troops getting terrified by Franz. The left flank is going quite well, too. The cavalry is still quite a threat, but our spear advantage is quite huge here. Let's see, and yeah, we're just going to be pressing that. Now, there is a big engage here on top of my skirmishers, with some spider riders coming in too. Franz also out of position, chasing some big bosses a bit too far. Is a bit scary, but if he can make it out of there, then I think we're fine. As for this left side, we have so much infantry support that these spider riders aren't too threatening, and we do manage to get them to rout. So with that, we're going to disengage with them, just leave one unit of knights to chase them off, and then continue pushing forwards with our cavalry, cycle charging where we can. On this right side, we overextended with our spears. They were moving in to save Franz, but in their current, after Franz was saved, they definitely should have pulled back. We saw what happened there. They actually got surrounded by greenskins and routed off. And with cheap infantry like our spearmen here, very important that you don't overextend there. We've also taken a big loss on our life caster. He actually gets gooned out by Goblin Big Boss and shattered off the map, which is very unfortunate. But maybe Franz can move in there to punish that big boss for the snipe. He gets in a decent hit, but not amazing. And he gets countercharged by what looks to be Wurzag here. Some big debuffs coming on Franz too. And we're going to send in our Pistoliers to give him some support. Our knights here are looking like they're getting charged by big guns. We're going to have to disengage with them. Having the big guns run through spears instead, which works out pretty well in our favor. Franz now, free from the net of Wurzag, is able to fly out. And we can use them to, I guess, just to snipe out heroes now. Probably the best choice. Left flank secured, thanks to our spear units, is great. And that means that they can collapse in and help support the main fight, which is pretty contended right now. With, let's see, both sides sort of at a standstill. But I do think we do have a pretty good advantage. And now, these Broken Tusk Mob are actually overextending. Which means, with some focus fire from our ranged troops, they should be going down. Franz 2 is in the mix. Throw down a big bonus versus large buff there to rout them off. And that is pretty huge. It gives us a very nice cavalry advantage. And given that we still have so many of our knights still alive, a cavalry advantage means that the greenskins don't have too many options. And now with mass routes going all around, it means that the end is nigh, but a big possible snipe on Franz could happen. Franz gets extremely low, and you have to remember, he doesn't have any healing. But at the last moment, we just barely managed to throw down a stand your ground. Franz surprisingly comes back despite having the route symbol appear on him. And he'll likely be able to take out Wurzag. Maybe a bit of a risky play since Franz might die, but I think we have enough of a lead where it doesn't really matter. And we send our opponent into army losses. So, very fun game there. Definitely a little bit dicey at some points, but I think we carried it out quite well. The big players here are the cavalry, and if you just look at the damage numbers, we definitely pulled out ahead on that front. These Orc Boy big guns just weren't really able to secure good charges. 1 HP friends, yeah. The big guns weren't really able to pull out good charges because of all of our spears. And just having that superior front line really did help a lot. As for these masked skirmishers from the greenskins, they weren't too much of a problem because of the pistoliers. And the heroes here, the huntsmen, getting in a lot of damage value, did extremely well. You can see we actually lost no models of huntsmen, which shows that, just that cavalry dominance was really coming into play. And also the unsung heroes, these spears, if we hadn't used them to block charges from the cavalry, things definitely would have gone very bad. Let's get recording. And once again, it's High Elves against Empire, and we've gone for an archer heavy build again. Maybe this is the style that I'll settle on for High Elves, since it just feels very strong. You have Teclis with his net, Caster with Plague of Rust will be able to kill all of the Empire troops, armored troops that is. Stuff like these demogryphs. Basically just the demogryphs. We also have Rangers, which will win against chaff front lines that our opponent might decide to go for. And some units of cavalry, just to just because it's generally a good idea to have some cavalry. They can pick away at remnants of infantry. They can stall other cavalry units, and that makes them very important. So first order of action is to move up so that we can get firing. And as soon as we're in range, we no longer need to advance. This mortar, although it does a lot of damage, it's going to be getting out DPS'd by our firepower here. Also, we don't really need to engage with our melee front just yet. We're going to wait on that. Push back the pistoliers with our ranged troops. And now that the front lines are getting close, we can move in with our rangers. Our spearmen will want to block the demogryph knights from moving in. And these spearmen over here are maybe a little bit threatening, but they're on the verge of routing, which is great. We want our cavalry to move into the front, though, to make sure that they they can stall up the cavalry of our opponent. And let's see here. As soon as they move in, they're going to stall out these guys because these demogryphs are going to be taking a lot of damage from our archers. You can see they get torn apart. Lots of damage there, which is great. But there are more demogryphs that we have to worry about. Franz, too, is also quite a threat. And we'll have to really make sure that he doesn't snipe out our troops. So we're bringing our cavalry in to stall him out. But I think our cavalry now have a much more important job. They need to be diving into this back line of silver bullets. And also shutting down the caster where they can. As for the demogryph knights, we have just so many archers that it's not extremely important that that our backline is defended, since with so few demogryph knights, it can't actually stop all of these guys. And so far, that's looking to be working. But Teclis does get what's it? Oh man, I can't think. Teclis, he does get terrified. There we go, that's the word. But that does mean that he comes back, and when he does, we throw down the net on top of Franz, and an overcast Plague of Rust means that Franz is in for a very bad time. He's getting focus fired by archers, and it looks like he will be going down. There we go, Franz is out of the game. And now, I'd say this is as good as one. We've taken huge advantages here. We still have 1 million archers, and there's not much to really collapse on our back line. Demogryph Knights are out, and it's just the Sons of Sigmar left. But that's not enough, and that's GG from our opponent. So, What we have here currently seems like an extremely brutal build against the Empire. Against things like Demogryphs, this does insanely well. Even if he, even when he did get into our backlines, our archers were able to just keep firing, and they got a ton of value. See here, 800 damage value or more on all of my archers, and yeah, this is feeling very strong. I'm quite liking this style of high elf play. Very reminiscent of my Vampire Coast style. Actually, extremely reminiscent, except now we have nets. And we have AP in the form of Plague of Rust, which is just wonderful. Look at the Demogryph Knights, they barely got any value. So with this next game against Empire, against Norska, we've brought a ton of range units. The new style that I am growing to love with High Elves and Empire. With a little bit of cavalry support to deal with skin wolves, just to chase off the remnants, and a bunch of spears to buy time for these guys to do damage. Horse will be flying around causing terror, while we use nets to pin down any troops that manage to sneak through. Our opponent, as Norska, he's taken a pretty heavy army of infantry with some Norscan trolls and Fimir to back him up. For his lord, he's taken Wulfric on foot, which is quite uncommon, and we'll have to see how this goes. By taking an army like this, he's given up a lot on the mobility advantage, except for these Norscan warhounds that are along in the back. So I think it's going to be imperative that we use our cavalry to keep them away, but maybe we'll just leave one unit of cavalry back to defend while we take our second unit to begin pressuring this front line. By cycle charging in and out, it'll buy us more time for our archers, but we'll have to see how that goes. Getting a lot of lag actually right now, but you know, this does buy me time to take a look at chat. Let's see here. Yeah, just talking about Vampire Coast and so on, but not much going on there. Man, this is a laggy game. Oh boy. So let's just talk tactics as we get into this. We have a bunch of archers. They're not especially effective versus marauders, but if we can get some shots in, it means that our spearman front line can actually hold against them and maybe even win, depending on how much damage we do. Although that's very good for us, it's not the most important thing, since really we want to be shooting at these berserkers. The berserkers can put in a lot of damage into our front line, and if they get onto our archers, that is a huge problem. So we'll be avoiding that as much as possible by putting in 10 units of ranged in onto them. Hopefully that goes well. As for these ice wolves, we'll be turning our huntsmen to face them, just so we can get a bit of damage. We're also going to pull back some spears to defend against that. Meanwhile, Franz, and he can probably just be cycle charging these Fimir warriors, since there's like basically no mobility here from Norska. And without mobility, we can really abuse our advantage here. So that just means cycle charging in and out. There's no skirmishers either. So generally, things are pretty good. Now, the trolls are very prone to routing. We have our cavalry here to defend this side. So I think we're going to throw down our net along the left-hand area. So that's, let's see here, right over. Come on. Let's see. This is a bit of a dicey situation, and I think, oh geez, we're gonna have to focus fire these berserkers. Something that I said I would do, but right now we're doing a little bit of a bad job doing that. The berserkers do begin moving into my backline. which is pretty scary, but we have secured some fronts with our cavalry. They're doing okay against the ice wolves, but geez, never mind. They actually get murdered, and that could definitely cause some problems. Meanwhile, along our left flank, the Fimir are on the verge of routing, and if we can secure that left flank, I think we may be okay. As for the Berserkers, they have been taken out, but man, this back flank is quite scary. Fimir do get terror routed though, and our archers are still operational, but wolves are finally collapsing in on top of them. I think it's time we bring our cavalry in to support on that front. And we'll also be bringing in Boris to try and rout these guys off. Let's see here. In fact, oh man, we're getting huge collapses on the left flank now. And there's a lot of wolves in the back line. These skin wolves, though, are on the verge of routing, and if we can just get Boris there, I think we'll be fine. We've almost routed off these wolves too. And once again, we can just shut down the Norskin mobility. It buys us a lot of time. A lot of space to kite, that is. So we're going to be bringing in Boris, chase off the skin wolves. Going to be fighting the skin wolf werekin too. And let's see here. Just need to decide where we want to throw down our nets, I think. Let's see, there's a few positions that we could throw them down. And I'm thinking probably on these trolls is a good idea. These skin wolves too could be a bit of a problem, but they're too far away now to engage. So man, where do we want to throw down this net? The trolls have chased they've chased my archers over there, which is pretty scary, but we've routed off the skin wolf werekin at the very least. And you know what? I really don't want him to be coming back. So we're going to throw down a net on top of him. That should keep him routed, or keep him in a state of being routed. That means that it'll take a lot longer for him to it'll take a lot longer for him to come back into the fight. Some hits from Boris too, without retaliation, will help out a lot. And if we can just kill him, that would help, or at least bring him very low. But man, he manages to escape too. So things are getting pretty dicey. Wulfric is on top of my archers too. We have bought some space to run back to, and we also have spears moving in to cover up these marauders. Our archers will be able to fire on the Fimir, and at the very least it looks like those trolls are overextending, which should help out a lot. Our goal here is to shut down Wulfric, since he is since he's the one keeping the leadership together for the oh Jesus, more wolves coming in through the back. Yeah, we're trying to we're trying to kill off Wulfric here, because without the leadership, the Norskins should get mass routed by Boris. But there are just so many wolves here that I think we might be running into some issues. Let's see, we do manage to rout off these skin wolves. Or not the skin wolves, but just normal wolves. And some of our archers are still operational. We can rout off these Norskin hounds too. But Fimir warriors are coming in. We're going to position our archers to fire in on them after they get netted. And we're going to be using Boris to rout off as much as we can here. Meanwhile, archers are firing away. And then once these spearmen are routed, it's back to trying to kill Wulfric. Let's see, some suicidal huntsmen actually get extremely close to the Fimir due to some line of sight issues. That's pretty bad too. We're getting closer to army losses, but maybe if we can just finish off this hero core, that's all. That's what we'll need. We'll have to see. Oh boy. Let's see here. Looks like Wulfric is having a hard time. We're near army losses, so I think we'll just call it GG. The game is also extremely laggy too, and we didn't want to sit that one through. Yeah, and I think a lot of that came down to the fact that, oh man, build-wise, that was really rough. There were actually a lot more wolves than I would have expected. And our goals of sniping out the heroes were sort of shut down by the fact that there weren't very many large targets. Of course, we could have sniped out these trolls and the Fimir, but our opponent did very well keeping them a safe distance away. Build-wise, actually, we also threw away our Knights of the Blazing Sun. If we kept them in reserves instead of charging out with them, we likely could have killed these wolves much better. And I think that's a goal for next time. In general, let's see. I think this Norskin build, it's pretty nice. I'd want to see how well it fares versus a more boxy style of Empire play with halberds, but I think it would still do decent. I'm not sure. We did snipe out the Marauders though, the Berserkers, but man, very dicey game. Very dicey. Let's take a look at yeah. My dreams of an archer frontline have been shattered. Yeah, dissing his mobility at the start of the match, and then turns out there's like a million guys hidden away. Rip. He actually had twice the mobile units than I expected, and almost like 4 times the investment with these ROR skin wolves. But okay, GG. Yeah. Interesting match. I think with Norska, I'd stick with my halberd build for sure. In this case, it's been wanted to punch a few. Yeah. Yeah. If you really want this build, try it with Free Company. Ooh, yeah. We'll try that next time. But for now, I think I'll close out the stream. It's getting pretty. We've been streaming for quite a while now, at least by my standards. So, thank you very much, guys. For watching. We'll definitely be trying out Free Company Militia next time, and I guess we look to see if we can find somebody to raid. Hopefully, pushing forwards that multiplayer community for Warhammer. And a quick check of the streams currently. Looks like there's no one streaming Warhammer multiplayer on Twitch, so we'll be closing it out. Once again, thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow at the same time, where we'll also have a tournament to celebrate my new my ranked ladder bot. Tournament will be streaming after after my quick battle stream, so very excited for that, and I'll see you guys then. Bye bye.